Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Talk Retail. This is where we embark on an extraordinary journey through the realms of retail innovation and transformation. I'm your host, Jitendranath Patri, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to a series unlike any other. In this podcast, Let's Talk Retail, we will dive deep into the heart of the retail industry to bring you conversations with true thought leaders.
Welcome to episode 5. Thank you very much for all the wishes and feedback, the suggestions. Do not forget to check out my previous episodes that are hosted on YouTube and Spotify. There's some interesting conversations with leaders within the retail ecosystem. One of the objectives of Let's Talk Retail was to really understand retail from its different perspectives. Today's episode, that way, is very different. My guest today has been in the retail industry for more than 2 decades. And not a typical business head or a CEO. She is the Chief Human Resource Officer for Metro Brands. I'm sure this conversation is going to be an exciting one. Let's welcome Nandini Mehta from Metro Brands to Let's Talk Retail. Nandini, thank you so much. Welcome to Let's Talk Retail, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Jitendra.
When did you move to Bombay?
It's been about 2 years.
Okay.
Since I've been in Bombay, yeah.
And you don't miss Bangalore?
So it's very mixed. So everybody keeps asking me. I'm loving Mumbai. What I miss about Bangalore is the weather, of course. And Bangalore is more open, more spacious. I've spent a lot of my childhood vacations in Mumbai. So always loved the city. I never thought I'll stay here.
So thank you once again. And I'm just going through your profile. First, walk us through your journey. Let's start from there.
I want to thank you for inviting me for this podcast. If I'm able to add some value to people around me through my experience and knowledge, nothing like that. So quickly about me, I come from a small town in Tamil Nadu called Trichy. Although I'm not a Tamilian, I'm a Gujarati. I've done my schooling and college there. Got married pretty young when I was in my final year of college. And so when I tell everyone my total work experience is 25 years, my actual work experience would be 37 years, which is 12 years of being a housewife. So I started after 10 years of being in my marriage. And the easiest thing that comes for a housewife is to become a teacher. So that's how I started my career. It just happened that I applied in the school where my children were studying, and it was for a temporary job. And then I ended up working there for 2 years. They were very happy with what I was doing. So total experience in teaching was 3 years. I thought teaching doesn't pay that much, and I had to look out for something else. And that's how retail operations happened to me. I spent about 5 years in retail operations, working with brands like ITC Wills Lifestyle, with Tata's West Side. I worked for a company called Fiorelli, which was into leather bags, exports of leather bags. And then I moved into training. So I did training for about 6 years, again, all in retail. I started with doing a lot of induction trainings for Big Bazaar with a consultant. I wasn't working with Future Group. I was working as a consultant for them. And then took up a larger role in a company called Total Hypermarkets, which is part of Jubilant Group. And the jackpot that came my way was Landmark Group. So I joined Max as the training head there. 14 years with Landmark has been something that I always talk about. While all my stints have taught me something, Landmark is what really built me to what I am today. I can very proudly say that. So I moved from being a training head without a team to, when I left, I was handling a team of about close to 100 HR folks. Wow. So and from managing the training for 7 stores, when I moved out, I was managing the entire HR for about 380 stores pan-India. I was into retail HR. And then the last 1 year, I was with Lifestyle, where I also handled the corporate piece. And then Metro happened to me. And the reason I took up Metro is, of course, because the role was larger. It was a CHRO role. And I thought I was ready to take up a role like that. So that's how I moved to Metro.
Nearly 3 decades in retail. And I'm very surprised you started in operations when retail possibly was in its infancy. Taking baby steps. What are the shifts you've witnessed in all these years?
So I'll talk more from an employee perspective.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a little on the customer and business part. From the time I joined retail to now, one of the biggest difference I see is in the quality of staff. In our times, we used to get employees, very easily. It wasn't very difficult to get people for the front end. The only difficulty was, why should I work in a retail store? So people who joined the retail store were people who weren't probably getting a job anywhere else or desperately looking out for a job, and they would join us, right? So retail at that time was, we would get some good staff whom we could groom, mold, move them into higher roles. Today, because of the number of retailers we have, the number of stores across all categories that we have, plus so many options for people to get jobs elsewhere. And over and above that, also more focus on getting educated, going abroad, having more fancy roles, which are sitting in front of the system and working. It's becoming more and more difficult for us to get quality staff on the front end. So that's one of the biggest challenges that I see, and the transition I see from what it was probably 15, 20 years ago to today. Second, I would say because of COVID has taught people lots. And during COVID, one of the biggest, I don't know if I should call it mistakes, probably out of desperation, this is what most retailers did, where we let go of a lot of employees, especially in the front end because stores were closed. And these employees went back to their hometowns, probably figured out how they should survive. So a lot of them have never come back. And that also has been, and now people think twice of going out of their comfort zone, moving into another city, working there, moving from a smaller to a bigger city, they think 10 times. So COVID has also kind of created that dearth of people. So I would broadly say shortage of supply and of quality people as compared to what it was years ago. This is one huge transition I see. This is on the people front. The second part of it that I see is in terms of the training that we deliver to the front end. So earlier, we always used to struggle, how do we reach out to them? How do we train so many employees across various cities? And it all used to be very physical. So we used to try and see how can we train the trainers for the store managers. Store managers are busy with operations, so they don't have the time to train the staff. There was a lot of, we used to face that as a big challenge. Over the years, online technology has really helped us reach the front end faster, communicate to them more frequently, be able to train them with, let's say, short, quick modules, put an app on their phone, and they're able to access whatever they want and learn from there. So learning, I've seen a huge transition in that part of HR as well. The third biggest thing that I would say is retail is only that much. So the pool that you get is from a set of competitors that you have. So you end up revolving around those. And for example, if you're in footwear, we would still look at people who are from the footwear background. So I may have only 10 competitors that I could go to and get people from. And nobody wants to hire freshers. The challenge becomes that you end up getting experienced staff. When you get experienced staff, they're also already at a certain package. So how do you manage that? So it's kind of a little bit of a challenge in terms of hiring people and then compensating them accordingly. So freshers versus experienced, managers don't want to spend time training the new freshers that come. So they want ready-made employees. So that was not the case earlier. Earlier, we would hire various kinds of employees, look at how we can train them, groom them, develop them, and move them to the next level. I don't see that managers have the patience for these days. That's another big transition. And from business perspective, competition has increased. When competition increases, your share of the pie reduces.
Right.
So business is always looking at how do we optimize, and profitability is one of the key measures for any business. So then it comes to optimization of costs when the sale is not happening. And the biggest cost is manpower. HR is always struggling with trying to convince the business that probably it's not the approach. Business is looking at profitability, bills, and manpower are two of the biggest costs that they have.
Yeah.
These were not challenges we used to see maybe 20 years ago, because lesser competition, more share of the pie, and hence these issues never came up as much. Whereas these become a day-to-day challenge for every HR professional on how to manage the costs.
I can kind of empathize with what you're saying and also relate to a lot of it. And one of the things that you mentioned is not getting the kind of people. And even after leaving the Future Group of, it's been 4 or 5 years now, I still get calls from some of the brands saying, hey, I want somebody in marketing. I want somebody to look after my CRM. And why is that happening? Why is there's this dearth? Or is it just people not looking at retail as a very lucrative career option? And I'm including front end also.
So let me talk about the back end first, since
Yeah.
you spoke about, you gave the example of marketing. See, people have more opportunities these days vis-a-vis earlier. So for example, if I'm looking at giving your example of marketing, if I'm looking at, let's say, a marketing head, maybe at a head level, it's not so much. Let's take a mid-level role. The person has like at least 6-7 options that he is looking at or she's looking at before they decide on where they want to join. Whereas in earlier days, that was not the case. While there was a lot of supply, the demand was also not as much as it is today. So what happens, the person is having 3-4 offers at least, keeps attending interviews, and then decides what he or she wants to take. So with options available for candidates, it becomes more and more difficult for us to hire. After COVID, the last 2 years has been the maximum offer to joining ratio declines that I've seen. So it wasn't that bad pre-COVID. Post-COVID, especially once the market opened up, people have been having options. Candidates have understood that they should attend as many interviews as possible and then have 3-4 offers and then negotiate wherever they want to join and get the best increase. And again, from let's say 6 months prior to COVID, when the business had started reducing, to end of COVID, a lot of people have had a huge pay cut or they've not had increments over 2 years. And all that is now backfiring because every employee, every individual wants to make up for that loss. Currently, this is one of the biggest challenges in terms of getting the right candidate and at the right salary.
And what do you think can be done to kind of bridge this or correct this, if I may ask perspective?
I really don't have an answer to this because from an employer perspective, I don't think there's much to be done. Probably we should look at best practices and try and strengthen our entire hiring conversation, our entire interview process, basically building our employer brand, wanting to join us. That's where we should focus on. So maybe we may not be the best paymasters. The employees, the candidate still wants to join us because of the kind of culture we have, for example.
But I was just leading to the same point that you mentioned, culture and then employee engagement. Do you think that will be good enough to keep them engaged, motivated?
So culture, the benefits, that should be something that we should look at. The other thing is, how do we retain our existing employees? There may be new higher requirements. Why would we allow our good people to leave? Of course, in spite of everything we do, the best of organizations will still have some attrition. How can we look at retaining our good talent? That becomes a big thing for any organization. And that's where the culture engagement piece would come in. Right? What is it that I look at as an employee? I'm an employee. You've been an employee. So what do we look at as employees? One is definitely my job, job satisfaction. And job satisfaction can be different, can mean differently to different people. I quite often cite this example that not everybody is always ambitious to take up more. Some people say, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I don't want to stretch beyond this, and I'm content. My manager has to treat me well. A typical job of this kind would be, let's say, a secretary, right? Then there are people like me who are always looking at what more. can I get added responsibilities? So one of the reasons I stuck on to Landmark for so many years was that every 2 years I was getting something new to do. So I kept having quite a lot of role changes. Of course, as you go up the ladder, then your options reduce, still your portfolio increases from that perspective. So there are employees who are more interested to see what more can I take up on my plate. I've done it, now give me more. Then you have a set of employees who probably want a work-life balance. Employees who like to stay long hours still have some fun while working long hours. There could be, let's say, my office is situated in a place where people don't get food around. So what am I doing to ensure that I facilitate ease of them getting? See, these are very basic. These are all very important as well. So from an engagement perspective, how do I keep my employees engaged with me, and not everyone has the same aspiration or the same motivation dimension? So how do we pick what are those various things that employees want and try and offer them that? Having said that, like I said, maybe two of the most critical things is what is my career development with the organization, what next for me, and autonomy. Very important that I'm empowered to deliver what I'm expected to deliver. So if we are able to put down those 5 or 6 critical things that employees are looking at that can engage them with the organization and work around that, retention is the best way of ensuring we don't need to go to the market to hire people.
Retention becomes so critical, not just from your customer perspective, also from first stage one is from your employee perspective itself. Can I add a bit of controversy to this? Do you think what will also motivate and maybe even retain employees is giving at least a certain percentage of the staff into profit sharing? Do you think that will really help?
It's a very interesting point you brought out, because across, I would say India, maybe I'm not very sure about most let's say the local retailers, at least as far as organized retail is concerned. In Metro, we have a very good practice. So all our store managers have a fixed salary, and then for whatever sale they do, they get a percentage of that sale. So it's a model we've been following. So interestingly, I guess you just picked that up. Coincidentally, that's what we do. And for our front end staff, we have, so usually what happens in retail is the incentive model is, let's say my store has to achieve X as the target. If you achieve anything above X is when your incentive plan starts. So there could be a basic amount at X, and then X plus there are slabs and incentives. This is a very common practice across all retailers. We don't have that practice. We have a commission on sale. So there is a basic salary that employees get. So store managers are, the whole process is slightly different. For employees, since we have minimum wages, we have to adhere to that. So we have a fixed amount that they get, and then we have a commission on whatever sale they have done. So we monitor every individual's contribution to sale, and we give them a commission irrespective of what that sale is. We give them a percentage as commission to that sale. So it is more or less like a profit sharing.
So it's about number of footwear sold during the day or for the week.
It is the value. It is not on the quantity.
Quantity. Obviously, it is a value, because then otherwise, how else will you calculate? So which means also working very closely with your operations team to ensure that this gets rolled out, firstly accepted, and then gets rolled out.
This has been practice from ages, to be honest. It's not something that I have introduced. I think this has been a best practice of Metro brands.
Because typically you always have this thing saying, hey, you know what? No, I did this much. That person did not do that much. X got more. I did not get what I deserved. There is always that little bit of dissonance that comes through.
The advantage we have is we have smaller stores and lesser number of employees. Moreover, footwear is a very personal selling product. You cannot, one cannot buy footwear without being assisted by somebody. So it helps us to track the sale accordingly. Moreover, since this is a practice, every manager knows how to manage this. And let's say if, for example, somebody just comes and picks up something without assistance in a store, then that sale goes into a kitty, and whatever that total sale is, that gets divided amongst everybody. So everything basically we've thought every bit of it, and we put all that together. So it's been something that's, like I told you, a best practice of Metro.
Nice. And what about, I'm going back maybe a couple of years when, of course, you're also managing larger stores, format which had much larger stores. So what about those stores? Did that similar kind of practice exist, or something else worked there that ensured employees were motivated and then retained?
So, of course, we had an incentive model, and Max being Max, we had seen only a growth trajectory. Very initially, of course, we struggled. After that, it's been like my CEO there always said, it was a hockey stick journey. We just kept growing after a point. So incentives, like almost 95% of our stores would get their incentives. We did not have anything different from other retailers from an incentive perspective. What we did do differently is when I took over the role of HR head in Max, I was handling the front end HR. Our attrition was close to 65-70%.
Oh, wow.
And we managed to bring it down to close to 30%. And some of the interventions we did there was, of course, like I told you, for everyone, aspiration is to grow. We had created an entire process where employees were evaluated for the next level. So it created a career tree. We had created a career progression program for them, post which they would get evaluated. And if they clear the evaluation, then they're ready for the next level.
Right.
And we had put a mandate with the operations team saying that at least 70% of your employees should be internally promoted. Only 30% should be hired from outside. So I saw that people looked forward to this, and we were able to provide career growth for a lot of employees. Also, what happens is when you're a small organization, you start growing really large, there are a lot of things which go haywire. For example, hiring is done where the manager is getting a little lesser than some of his team members. So a lot of those corrections that we had to do. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes things just go awry or haywire when you're suddenly growing. So
Right.
it becomes very important to always stay grounded and look at things which are going wrong and fix them quickly.
No, that's a good perspective to take, actually.
This was one thing we did where we ensured that there's a salary benchmarking done across internally first, of course, to see that there are no imbalances. We looked at career progression internally. We also, they're working, while we say it's a 9-hour job, at least twice a week, they have to work a little extended. And the 9 hours is physically very strenuous for them.
True.
Emotionally too, because customers are not reasonable. There are many customers who really
can be very difficult.
Out their frustration on the staff. And these are employees who come from a low economic background, who are already going through a lot in their personal lives. So it becomes very important to make them enjoy what they're doing. So while we say engagement is, for HR, engagement is fun, it is also important.
Right.
So while we do a lot of things from an engagement perspective in terms of ensuring capability building, the other part is the fun at work. So we had done a lot of initiatives around ensuring that there is a one day which is dedicated to sports, one day which is dedicated to culturals, rewards, recognition at a very large platform. So these things that we did on the fun at work part and on the capability building part, we were able to engage our front end a lot.
Right. I'm going to ask you, maybe slightly go off tangent a bit. A lot about what you've kind of described and is something that seems to hold good for a set of retailers. Does it actually hold good for the rest of even organized retail? When I say that is, I can understand a Landmark Group or even Metro or some of the others who are more recognized, because they believe that it has to be done and people are an asset. Is this something that some of the smaller retailers, smaller brands also follow? Or is it the practice that is there something that
that it is all about the belief and how would I say, the belief and the thought process of the leaders in the organization. At Metro, we are very clear that we are of course very sales focused. Our people matter a lot. So even here in the front, in fact, in Max, we had 70% that internal growth, we say 100% internal
Oh,
growth.
wow. Okay.
Now, of course, because we are speeding up our growth, it becomes difficult to get people from internally groomed. So we are looking
Right.
at hiring from outside as well. But
Hmm.
idea is to see how we can first grow people from within.
Right.
So it has to do with the belief of the leaders in the organization and what they drive as a culture. I would say it is not impossible for everyone to drive this.
Right.
It is just like I said, how much of belief does the leader have in the entire process? What is the time and effort that the core team is able to give on this entire process? These are two very critical things.
Super. And how much of e-commerce has now suddenly become a big thing? Last 3, 4, 5 years, especially post-COVID, there's been a lot of movement towards e-commerce. Has that changed something in what you all do? Did you have to adapt certain strategies to or change certain strategies?
So for Metro brands, e-commerce has been a boon because during COVID, what really helped us keep afloat was e-commerce. So the way the entire team came together, put in efforts to build the entire e-commerce platform and sell products online. The warehouse team supported these. A lot has to happen at the warehouse. Stores were closed at that time. So the way the entire team adapted to the online way of selling a product was amazing at Metro, I would say. And I would say it's not just about online shopping, it's about whole technology. Today, every organization, irrespective of whether it's retail or non-retail, has to look at how do we use technology in what we
Hmm.
because customers, the younger customers are more tech savvy.
True.
Today, if I see my nieces, if I see my sons, my daughters-in-law, they're all anything they want, they quickly find some app, some this one to get the product. They want to compare a particular product that they want, they immediately go online and check 5 products, the prices, the brands, everything, and then they decide what they want to buy. So adapting to technology is very, very critical and is one of the biggest skills that every employer needs to ensure that their employees are trained in. So that's how I would put it, not just online. Definitely online has made an impact in terms of customer behavior, I would say. More and more of, so I myself do this. I go to a store and I would look at a product, I would check the price. If it's full price, I would first scan and see if it's available on any online website at a discount before I decide whether I want to buy or not.
Right.
Right? That's how customer behavior has become today. So definitely online does make us think twice about how do we improve our offline stores and the experience in the offline stores.
So coming back to again, what's your staff, the ability to get people and technology. I'm so glad you brought up the point of technology. I was not expecting you to talk about technology. So glad you did. So do you think self-checkout stores is something that will come to? I know this is a question that I can ask a multitude of people within the retail ecosystem. I'm asking from very HR perspective.
So, so there's a bit of a, so if I look at it from a customer perspective, uh, maybe my son, my niece would love to do a self checkout. Probably my parents may not be someone who would, they would want someone to assist them in from sales to checking out. I would be someone who may need initial help in terms of self checkout, how to do it, and all that. And once I learn, then I'm able to do it. So I'm just talking about the generations.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is I'm explaining the generations here.
Got it.
So maybe a few years down the line, definitely self checkouts would become the norm. Currently, especially in India, we have a very mixed group of people. We have a lot of customers who are still not very adaptive to technology. And they expect that personal touch, that someone is around to help them to navigate through their shopping, through their checking out. In India, it would still take a little longer to have a completely automated checkout system.
Right.
Maybe out of India, there could be many countries where this is already happening and eventually will become the only way of checking out.
Or could it be your tier one cities like Bangalore, Bombay has this facility, and then your tier two, tier three markets, which is now growing, may still continue with people.
I don't know. In India, I feel even in tier one cities, there are a lot of customers who expect help. We Indians as a culture, we like to be assisted around. So it's from a culture perspective, I'm just talking about how the consumer behavior is. So whether it's tier one or tier two, we require assistance.
And a very interesting thing in your profile that I saw, recognized as a women achiever, top 100 HR professionals. How did this happen?
I don't know if I should say this. Honestly, I really don't believe in these awards. Having said that, I'd definitely like to share how did this happen, not from being a woman achiever, from being where I am today. It's not just about me, it's about anyone. Hard work always. And I won't say I have been a visionary for myself. I always believe that whatever I take up, I should not give my boss an opportunity to say that I did not deliver what was given to me. And that has kept me going. So I would work through the night if required. I would work over the weekends. I did not mind putting in long hours. I would travel 15, 20 days a month, visiting stores, visiting the regions, talking to people, understanding what the challenges and issues that they had, and then coming back and putting it all together and preparing my strategy for the year, saying these are the issues. So my employees are my customers. So I believe that it was a two-pronged approach. One is, what is it that my employee wants, and how can I help make their life easier in our organization? And second is, what is it that my management wants me to deliver, and how can I deliver that? So, and irrespective of what I had to put in for that, of course, not compromising on my value system. What does it take for me to put all this together, convince the management for the employees, and certain things, of course, the other way around as well? That's what has taken me to where I am today. I've been very, very focused on delivering more than what was expected out of me. And that always works. It can never fail.
Interesting. You mentioned that, in fact, obviously your customers are your employees, and then this kind of takes me back to what we've been talking today, at least in the current times in marketing. We're all talking about personalization, and somewhere you did bring up that point, saying, "Hey, I need to look at my employees and try and segregate them to cohort spaces, what they're looking for, what their aspirations are, what their path is generally, and try and create something for them that actually resonates with what." So there's some bit of personalization bit happening there.
Having said that, I would say it's not easy. Large organizations can definitely not personalize an employee experience. Large or small, even for us, there's always this constraint. Then that these are 5, 6 drivers of motivation. And you can have your entire engagement programs revolving around those 5 or 6 drivers. And two of that I spoke to you about: fun at work and capability building. So career paths, providing training and development opportunities, training managers to develop their team members. That will all be the capability building part of it in terms of motivation. Identifying your critical talent and seeing how can you protect them, so that becomes a big thing. And then, of course, providing the fun at work is where you say providing the infrastructure, giving them, let's say today everybody wants work-life balance. So how do we look at initiatives that can help them spend more time with their families? So a lot of those initiatives, and of course an engagement calendar where there is a lot of fun activities. Rewards and recognition becomes a very critical part. Today everybody wants to be appreciated.
True.
So putting those 5, 6 pillars of engagement together and having programs that we're able to drive in the organization can definitely help us retain employees.
Right. from a retail perspective, one is always exposed to obviously the business side of it, or it is the connect with the e-commerce touch point, or is the stores. One didn't really know that there is a huge machinery called HR that's really it's really working in the background to ensure that a lot of things go on the front end.
I had also mentioned this in one of my earlier podcasts, and I want to mention it here also that whoever is watching this podcast, apart from HR, it's a humble request to all of them not to think that HR is just here to conduct a few engagement activities. There's a lot of work that goes behind what HR does, and everything that employees enjoy in an organization has a lot to do with the HR department.
So, absolutely. One last question. Let me break it up into two parts. One is, what do you think holds good for the future of retail today? And any kind of suggestion or advice you would have for emerging HR professionals in the retail sector?
So, future of retail, we spoke about technology. And the more conversations that I have with the business, I hear more about how can we incorporate technologies, which means when you get technology, it means reskilling your employees. So how do we look at roles which can be redirected to a different skill set? So for example, let's say recruitment, the typical way of recruiting was source profiles through consultants or use a LinkedIn Naukri report, get the CVs, interview the candidate, share it with the hiring manager. He or she interviews, and then we decide offer. Now there are so many tools available where the interview can be done, recorded, and directly given to the manager. Parsing of a JD, which gives the CVs to us. There is a CV comparison that the AI would do for us and give us the best CV. So the entire process has now evolved because of technology. And if I don't reskill my recruitment team to be able to use those tools, eventually they'll become redundant. I think it becomes very important as HR to be able to understand what the business is looking at from a technology perspective and quickly work on reskilling the employees towards handling those technologies. Otherwise, employees would become redundant. That's the biggest future of retail that I see. My advice to HR professionals, I would just say that I am not an HR. I'm a Bachelor of Education and a Bachelor of Science in Rehabilitation Science. I have nothing to do with HR. I've been extremely successful in this role purely because I've been able to understand what the business requires. I've been able to, like I mentioned, I've always looked at what is it that my employees want and what is it that my management wants from me. So it's very, very important for you to not get carried away with what you learned as theory, because theory is very different from practice. It's important and also second most important, don't copy paste something from another organization or something that you've done elsewhere and replicate, because no two organizations, no two businesses are the same, no two leaders are the same. So very important to not be theoretical, very important to not just copy paste something. It is important for you to, as HR, to think, understand the business, talk to people, listen, and then go back with what is it that you need to do. That's very, very important.
Fantastic. Somewhere your stint in education actually may have helped you mold yourself into this role.
I've got good mentors, I would say. Of course, education never fails you. Your education is always
something. And I meant your experience in teaching.
Of course, in the rehabilitation science program, I had psychology as a subject.
Right.
B.Ed has psychology as a subject. So it's not that I was completely off HR. I hadn't handled that portfolio. And operations and HR are
two different animals.
Different languages. Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
So moving from operations to HR, I think has not been an easy thing.
Transition,
I was extremely aggressive initially. Over the years, I've learned that.
So I think your front end experience also comes in handy to really understand what's really happening, what happens out there.
Actually, good you brought that up, Jitendra, because in fact, not just HR, anyone who joins the head office, regional office, it's very important for them to spend time in the front end.
Yeah.
and not just spend time observing, spend time doing the work that they do. Because whatever empathy I have for the front end is because I have been there. Maybe for retail HR professionals, this is very important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nandini. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so
Loved
much.
it and much appreciate you spending your time.
Thanks a lot.